100 days ago, I stumbled upon this tiny swarm of bees in desperate need of a new home. With only a couple of hundred workers and the warm flowering months mostly behind us, by winter, this colony was destined to starve. That's if they weren't picked off by predators first. So I shook them into a box, and after locating the queen, I put her aside in a cage. This will keep her safe and attract the rest of her workers from up in the tree. Then I set out to do some recruiting from my own hives back home. Unlike most ants and wasps, bees from different colonies won't always fight each other, so I was hopeful that my bees would give aid to this struggling wild queen and accept her as one of their own. But even if this works, boosting this swarm's workforce was only the first step in reviving them, because they were also going to need a proper place to call home. After a bit of searching, I found the perfect thing, a trunk from a tree that had fallen over in a storm. It was big enough for a colony, but just small enough that I could actually transport it. The real challenge, however, was figuring out how to turn it into a functional hive without spending 2 weeks carving into it. Luckily, I managed to use a ring where the log had started to rot to pry out the core. From there, the rest was fairly straightforward. I then nailed in a lip to hold the top bars, which are removable pieces of wood where the bees can build their comb. I added a ridge in the centre to help guide them to build in the direction that I want. These bars would be crucial because they'll allow me to remove comb for inspections and keep track of pests and disease. I also added some wax to encourage them to start building on the frames in the first place. But that's the thing about this plan. Once I add them to this log, they'll have the freedom to leave if they don't like it, so I had to do everything I could to make it suitable and convince them to stay. The problem is that they'd been confined to this tiny box all day, so I figured they probably wouldn't be in the mood to listen to me. So I plugged the queen cage with sugar. This will keep her inside for a couple of hours while the workers slowly eat through it, and it should prevent the bees from immediately flying off. That's because if they've truly accepted her as their new leader, they won't leave their queen behind. So I'm hoping that by the time they've released her, the colony should have settled down a bit and will be ready to consider the home that I'm offering. Finally, I left them with some sugar syrup as a peace offering, closed the log and crossed my fingers. The moment of truth came 5 days later. I was met straight away with some good news, as the bees at least hadn't left, and their numbers were still pretty strong. But the true sign that they'd accepted the log as their new home would be whether they'd started building any cells. So I was stoked to catch my first glimpse of a tiny piece of comb, hidden behind a curtain of dangling workers. It was a start, but if they were going to survive the upcoming winter, they'd need to expend a lot, and fast. So I refilled their food and tucked them in for a critical next 2 weeks. By day 18, traffic at the entrance was starting to pick up now, and for good reason. Inside, the workers had been making some serious progress, with 2 full pieces of comb established. Not only were they now storing some nectar, but the queen had also started laying the first generations of this new colony. This timing was crucial, because without new generations, these original founding bees would slowly die off, leaving the hive pretty vulnerable. By day 30, the colony had expanded to 4 frames, and the different stages of brood development were now clearly visible. I also witnessed one of my favourite events, young adult bees emerging into the world, ready to contribute to their colony. But they'll need plenty of protein to fuel the rest of the developing young, so I mixed a pollen supplement with some sugar syrup to form a patty. The nurse bees will spend the next few weeks distributing this food to the rest of the future workforce. And that protein did its job, because by day 46, the colony had already outgrown the wooden top bars that I'd made. I had to quickly knock up a few more to avoid halting their momentum as they'd started building off the edge of the top bars. Luckily, I was able to reattach the protruding comb, which the workers would properly secure as they continued to expand. With winter only a month away and 8 frames of comb built out, the colony needed to start storing large amounts of honey, otherwise they would starve. Unfortunately, desperation is common this time of year. Wasp scouts had started to patrol relentlessly, picking off tired foraging bees. These wasps are essentially on high-risk food raids, as resources become scarce as the cold weather sets in. If a scout were to find this honey and report back to their nest, we could have a war on our hands. But unfortunately for the wasps, this colony isn't so little anymore, and it doesn't take kindly to thieves. This cluster of bees had come a long way since I found them 100 days ago. With some feeding to make up for the lack of flowers, they'd managed to build out 10 frames of comb and raised a formidable force of workers to keep each other warm through the cold months ahead. But from this point on, they can no longer rely on my help. Opening the hive through the winter would release their stored heat and risk chilling the young, and any feeding outside the hive would quickly be taken over by much stronger colonies. This means that if they're going to survive long term, it all comes down to one thing: how much food they've managed to store. So I was relieved to see that they'd been hard at work over the past month, putting away around 10 kilos of honey. Nothing is ever guaranteed, but they've now given themselves a genuine shot at making it to next spring, and if they do, the surrounding forest and its plant life eagerly await their arrival.